Hi everyone, it's Sister Folk. Welcome to your first optional project critique. And I'm looking forward to going over your projects tonight, letting you know some general tips that should be helpful that usually people miss, and then jumping right into critique. Those of you who opted in, should be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to point out a few quick things that people usually miss, and then we'll go ahead and jump right into the critiques. Obviously, remember, you do need to have at least one page that has a 2-column layout, and you need to have the article from lds.org or byuiscroll.org. Now, I want to make a point of mentioning that you don't have to have the whole article. If your article is really long, I am completely fine with you cutting off the last however much of the article you need to after that 600-word point and say, read more at lds.org/ an amazing talk. Okay, so I'm totally fine with you doing that. Don't make it big. Don't make it look like a sticker. Just add one small, simple line that will reference them to the rest of the article, and that will hopefully free you up to have a lot of nice visual white space and keep things looking simple instead of trying to have to cram your images on there. You definitely want to have some things pop off the page, and if you're trying to fit a ton of body copy on, it's not going to look good. The other thing people sometimes miss is these 3 headings and subheadings, so make sure you have those on there, and the pull quote, and then you must shoot 2 of the images yourself, all right? If you want to have a stock image of, for example, the Savior or a temple, feel free to put that on there in addition to the 2 images that you've shot yourself, okay? And make sure you have something wrapped around an image or a shape. And then I will still be grading on the principles of typography, so make sure you're showing me that you understand things like proximity, alignment, contrast, etc. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to our first critique. Let's scroll down a bit to the first one. I will say this video is probably going to be too long. I'm supposed to be visit teaching in a few minutes. We will just ignore my visit teacher. Not in a few minutes, in an hour. Don't worry. I'm not going to neglect my visit teaching. Okay, so this video is probably going to be too long for me to go over everything. And so I am going to be dividing everyone in half. And I'll probably do the first half of you that opted in here on Facebook, and then the second portion of this video tonight when I get back from visit teaching. So what we will do is we will just go in the order that you posted on Facebook. So if you posted really early on in the critiques, you'll probably be in the first portion of this video. If you posted later on in the Facebook stream here, you'll probably be in part 2 of the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and have me try to find the first person. Oh, and I do want to say, holy cow, you guys are the most invested in instructor critiques of any section I've ever had. Legitimately, I've never had so many students opt in. So awesome job. Okay, let's get started with CJ. Here is your first page. And I'm assuming you took this image, which is great. Did you take this image? If you did, it's a really nice image. Just make sure it's one you took, okay? I like how it has kind of this mottled background, but it is making it difficult for us to actually read. I really have to focus to be able to decipher what this says. So one thing that you could do is you could maybe increase or darken. If this is a whole image, which I'm guessing it is, you could probably darken or put on a filter or something that will make the background a deeper color and a darker color so that these white words stick out. The other option is you could make it more transparent. And how you do that is you're just going to pull up your image, and then you go to Window, Effect, and here is the opacity. You can see how I just made that flower so much lighter. Okay, so you can do that with your image, and that would make this background lighter. So play around with a few different things. I think right now, especially right here along the book, along some parts of the pen, it gets a little bit too tricky to be clear visually. I see you have your nice subtitles, which is awesome. You have a pulled quote with it wrapped around. That's really great. Let's go ahead and look at the other. Oh, the one thing I will notice is you don't have a contrasting typeface. So these are so far are all serifs. And so you have this in all caps, but I really would love to see something full of contrast right here. Maybe an awesome contemporary looking script, maybe a sans serif, something that will stand out and make it look a little bit more modern. You know, even something like kind of fun like this. So play around with it, see if you can come up with something interesting that can go there. If you don't know how to do that, just watch the announcement that I posted and it will show you how to walk through doing that. Okay, so something like that might be nice. All right, so play around with that a little bit. And then let's go ahead and jump to your middle spread, which looks really nice. And again, if you took these images, they look really cool. I like it a lot. You might benefit from the thing I was just mentioning, which is cutting out a few paragraphs and say continue reading at lds.org and the link here, because this is a lot of body copy. It's just a lot to read, and I think it would probably look better if you could do something fun, like take this cool flower that you made a transparent. Oh yeah, I can tell you know how to do transparency because I'm assuming you did it here. And here, yeah, this looks really cool. I love how you did that. But you could up the saturation of this flower so it really sticks out on the page, and do a wrap around it and not have to worry about having too much type because of that. So I think that would help the design a little bit. It would help you add in some white space. You can make your columns a little bit narrower and a little bit more tidy. Since these are such long paragraphs, you might play around with justifying your type. Okay, so what that is you have your column here, and you can come into paragraph palette, and you can play around with doing something like this and see how that makes my columns look really nice. Since you have so much type, I think that might make yours look really nice too. And then I'd love to see that contrasting typeface on your subtitles. Maybe even consider a different color. Pull out a nice, pretty black, make it big, or even yellow if you think it would pop off the page enough. But really, you're mostly to the fine tuning since you have a lot of the components on here. Just add white space, try to add a little bit more visual pop, and I think you'll be on the right track for sure. So great job, CJ. Look forward to seeing your final. Okay, let's go ahead. Hey, Tina says, looks like you've done this before. Yep, you're doing really good. Okay, let's scroll down. Dixie, you opted in, which is wonderful. Missionary Training Centers. Okay, and yours is 3 pages, 3 separate pages. Okay, and I remember I saw yours. Well, did you put it on again later? I'm wondering if you did. Makes it a little bit tricky if I think I remember seeing a different version. Maybe not. I don't know if you added another version down here somewhere. Let me just look really quick so I'm making sure that I'm critiquing your most current version. I hate to go all the way through a critique. Okay, yes. I knew I saw it somewhere. Perfect. I'm glad you figured out that 3-page spread. Doesn't it make it a lot more easy to see? The only problem with this is I can't critique as easily the typeface because I can't really read the typeface. I can tell this is a sans serif, which is awesome. It looks nice and crisp and clean. I would definitely add a more extreme contrasting typeface, okay? So probably come in here and you don't want to use a sans serif. You could try to find an interesting, compelling, eye-catching serif. Maybe something like that. Although you'd have to be careful you don't make that too small or these thin lines are going to disappear. You could something like this might be interesting. Just kind of, if you're making it your focal point over here, you don't want it to be a real boring sans serif, or your article is going to look dated, or a real boring serif. Otherwise, your article is going to look dated. Your other choice is that you could play around with, let's see, I know they have scripts. You could play around with some of these and find something that'll look really nice for one of your headings. Say you choose something like this, and you could put that here, Missionary Training Center, and then you could use that for your subheadings. You could make them a different color. Maybe you make them this red, so you have an overall awesome color scheme that looks good. I will say, I think I saw even another one where you got, didn't you get the, I thought I remembered, yes, here's the version. Okay, so this is looking good. I like how you were able to get that typeface on there. I know you struggled with that. I'm a little confused about placement though. It looks a little weird on top of the luggage. So here's what I might do. I might shrink the luggage a little bit and have it real apparent, because you did do a wrap, but it's such a big picture, you can't really appreciate the coolness of the wrap. So maybe if you make it this a little bit smaller, you could move it in between these two columns, okay? And, oh, you did a wrap over here too. That looks neat. I like that. Okay, make sure you turn off hyphens, because I see only part of a word here. See how it says fundamentals? So go in to your paragraph palette and click to unhyphenate, okay? When you have, you might need to have it all selected, Control A, and then here, say I have hyphens, and I'm gonna deselect them. Okay, so be sure you do that. That's gonna keep it looking nice and modern as well. And then another thing is, I think you're too close to this black line that you have going around. And your image stops just short of that. See that gap in the space? So make sure your image fills that fully. And then I would pull this column away. You want a nice little space here between the edge of that and the edge of the page for your text to breathe. My one suggestion might actually be to remove this box and to make this cool background that you have bigger. Make it fill the page, and that might help it look more contemporary too. Because a long time ago they used a lot of shapes that just were black outlines. So that's a quick way to kind of make it look like it was something that you designed in Word or that you designed a long time ago. But a lot more modern thing to do with nicer printers that they have now is to pull it off the edge of the page, and that's immediately going to make it seem more contemporary. So if you decide to do that, then your columns could have room to breathe without having this line right here, and they would just exist in their own space. I will say that I think your typeface is a little bit too big. I would probably make it smaller, and I don't know what it's set out right now, if it's a 12. Let's see on this, what is mine that I have here? It's a 8.64. That's probably a little bit too small. So I would say probably don't make it too much smaller than a 9 or a 10. But a lot of magazines have relatively small typeface. And so see how that frees up so much white space on this one? So I would try to do that. I would decrease the size of this body copy. You can keep your subheadings big and visually impactful with a contrasting typeface, perhaps even in a different color. You could pull out the yellow here or the red, like I mentioned earlier, for those headings. And then another thing is your article is a little bit different because it has a list. So for me, it feels a little awkward to start the list at the bottom of a column. I would probably try to start the list to have this writing and try to exist in a little bit of a separate space from this whole list. So maybe you have your writing here and you can add some white space on top and have this column exist in this space. Maybe wrap it around this cool luggage if you can. And then you have some maybe white space here on this half of the page, And then your list of missionary training centers could be 2 columns on this page, 2 narrow, kind of nice looking columns. Okay, so play around a little bit with that and think intentionally about how you have your layout and what is in proximity to each other. So, for example, that's why I'm kind of saying maybe it would make a little bit more sense to separate these out and have this list exist in a little bit of a separate space than this list. Or if you're really excited and do want to use a shape, behind or around your list would be a great place to use it. And then I might pull this quote, and maybe you could put the quote up here, interrupting this column, and maybe going into a little bit of your white space. Okay, so you have a lot of different things you could play around with. I know you said it was pretty frustrating getting it to this point. So those are a lot of options. Make choices about what you think would look best. You don't have to do everything that I've mentioned, but I just want to give you plenty of food for thought so you can kind of think about what direction you might be able to go. Honestly, if you need to cut out some of these on the list, feel free to do so. No one is going to compare this spread to the actual MTCs that are out there, but they will appreciate the overall design aesthetic if you show it to someone. Okay, so thanks, Dixie. Good luck. I hope everything goes smoothly for you moving forward. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll back up. Let's see, here were you, Dixie, Tina. I'm pretty sure you opted in. Did you opt in? Yes. Okay, great, Tina. Here's page 2, page 3, page 1. Okay. Let's take a look at page 1. Mistakes make history. Ooh, that sounds like a really interesting article. Okay, this is funny. I like the popcorn in the background. That's a real cool looking watermark type effect. Let me try to visually see how it would flow into this page. Okay, so you have this square shape, and then I don't know if in your mind these two go together or these two go together. Nothing super looks like it's a matching full page spread, because like this shape in the background doesn't really go with these shapes. This shape in the background doesn't really carry over to this one. So excuse me, you might consider which of the 2 pages is your spread and then design them so they look like these 2 go together. Or maybe it's your cover page and the one beside it. So see those shapes that you have going on. Maybe you could carry one of the shapes. Oh, that's page 3. So maybe you would carry this page 2. Oh, okay, so I see. So maybe this is the first page, and then this is your spread 2 and 3, and this page goes right here. I'm assuming that's what you're planning on. Excuse me. Okay, so I like some of the things. I can see you have some good white space. I love how you did this text wrap here. I might pull in your type so there's not quite so much padding between the edge and between your space. And that's one of those functions under the text wrap options. So you can pull that in. That way you're not having these half words that are a little bit of a problem. The other option is you take this circle and you just need to bump it over here a little bit, and then you're going to get complete words. Make sure you turn off your hyphens, and you do that by going here to the paragraph palette, selecting your type, and then deselecting hyphens, okay? That's going to maybe create a little bit of a weird space for you because you might have to jump a line. So that's one of the reasons I would recommend decreasing the padding and then also moving this shape a little bit. Ooh, that's a cool quote. I like that quote. Okay, I would probably make this quote a little bit bigger. It looks a little bit too small in this large circle, or make the circle a little bit smaller. All right, another thing is see how you have this large space between the subheading and the paragraph that goes with the subheading. And you would think, according to the principle of proximity, this subheading goes with the paragraph above it. Now, what you want to do instead is you want to delete this big space here And you're going to go in to your character palette and you're going to play around with the leading, okay? So the leading is the space between lines. So you're going to select this line and you're going to pull it up and see how it has a little bit. You could even leave it a little bit more of a space. See how it has, and I actually have 2 lines there. Okay, see how maybe you leave it like this, and then you increase this space a little bit more. You want to select the line that it's under, and see how that's moving my subheading down. Okay, obviously I wouldn't want this little line here by itself. I would want my subheading to not have any widows. But see how this groups my subheading more with what follows it than what's behind it. That shows me you understand the rule of proximity. So that's kind of an important component to the subheadings. All right, so let's take a look at your other subheadings and see if they need that too, which is from a glance. Yeah, it looks like they do. Okay, so I'd work on that. Oh, you have some cookies. That took me a second to realize what those were. I wonder if you might want to zoom out a tiny bit just so you see a little bit more of the cookie shape, because I thought it was popcorn again for a minute. So maybe see if that looks good so you just know. I do like that the cookie is what fills the whole frame though. You don't have any plate or any background or anything, so that's a good choice. One thing I will say is you need to take this stroke off. You have a lot of cool shapes and then only these 2 have a stroke. So it's not very consistent. So I'd probably get rid of this black stroke. Strokes look pretty dated usually. They can be used to good effect sometimes, but I would recommend eliminating them and keeping with the nice, clean, kind of modern look you have on the other shapes of going from the shape itself just to white with no interference. That helps the eye visually roam through the page. Okay, so let's see. Here's page 2. Okay, so this is your page 3. Let me make sure you have the text wrap, you have your 2 images you took. Let's go ahead and take a look at your cover page. I like your 2 columns on the bottom. Those are looking good. This, according to the rule of proximity, again, is really floating in no man's land. So I would move by, so it's on the same line as Gabrielle Boardman. I would capitalize the B, and then I would move it up near the title. Also, this text box is too close to the edge of the word. You need to increase the padding again between the edge of your word and your shape so they're not conflicting, because right now they're in conflict as opposed to working together. So I would move this blue box up a little bit and move it down a little bit so the title is safely within it. And then you can take this line, keep it nice and small, and you could tuck it right here and kind of the sheltering arm of the Y on the word history. And it might even fill a nice portion of that. Wouldn't it be cool if you could make it perfectly align with the H too? Maybe increase the tracking a little bit so it does that. Another thing is you could make this text box go off the side of the page, or you could eliminate this text box altogether and have a cool looking kind of modern circle with the title inside of it, which I think would be nice. I see you have contrasting typefaces. You have your title here or your subheadings here, and I would recommend to add some contrast to your title. It's really going to make that title pop a lot more. So maybe this sans serif you have, maybe you put that word mistakes in it, or you put history in a sans serif and you make history double the size it is right now. So it's kind of peeking out a little bit behind mistakes and make, and it's in a different font. Wouldn't that look neat? So you have this nice circle and then mistakes, make, and really big history, and then tucked in the Y by Gabrielle Boardman. Okay, so work on this a little bit. Try to make it look a little bit more cohesive, that it all flows together, and a little bit more of a visual pop. by thinking a little bit more about your typefaces. Okay, you could play around with a different typeface, but I'm assuming you're using this one because it's down here and this is your contrasting one. So I'm totally fine staying with that. Just play around with other contrasting elements like size probably. Okay, and also if this is a lot bigger, this gap between these two lines isn't going to be as big, which right now I think it's too much of a gap. Okay, so that will hopefully help you a little bit. There are a lot of options, and like I've said before, you don't have to select all of them when it comes to what you're deciding to do. Just make some choices and then you can move forward from there. But you're definitely onto the right track. You have the right images and your columns are looking really nice. These columns might actually benefit from being justified too. And how you do that is you're just going to come in to here and you're going to select your columns, go to paragraph, and click on this one, justify. Right now, it probably looks a little bit ragged on the edge, but when you click justify, it's going to make them into nice, tidy boxes, which will look kind of cool. Okay, so that's an option as well. So good luck with your final, Tina. I look forward to seeing it. Okay, Miss Shelby. Let's see. Oh, no, you're not. Oh, yeah, you are next. Shelby. I feel like I know you very well by now, Shelby. Even though I've never heard your voice. Okay, so here's your first spread. This is your third one. That's a little bit different. No, maybe this image kind of goes next to that one. That's what I'm going to guess. Okay, let's take a look at your first two. First of all, I love this sizing on your title. Nice and big. You're following that rule of making things bigger than you think you should, and it always pays off. The one thing I will say shouldn't be as big is your normal typeface, okay? This is too large. So generally, you want to keep your type for the body copy around 10 or 11. And that's going to free up a lot of white space, and it's going to make things a little bit easier on the eye in terms of not having such large body copy to read. I think you made this bold so it would stand out on the background. Your other option is you come in here to effects, click it, and I have to have an image selected first. So let me select an image, go with this one. Okay, effects, and you can decrease that opacity. See how my flower is getting so much lighter? Okay, and that maybe will allow you to not need to bold, because it looks a little weird to have this side of the page bolded, but this side not. All right, so I would probably make that a little bit smaller, and then I'd try to make your columns the same width or the same height. So see how this one's so much longer than this one? I would try to make them the same height so they're nice and tidy, and when you decrease the font size, that's going to help out with that a lot. The other thing is I would try to get these a little bit closer together, play around with your leading, and your leading, if you remember, is here under the type palette, and you can decrease or increase. Let me select some. Okay, see how that's spreading it out? This is decreasing it. And so I would play around with that a little bit so that you can have not that gap, that big of a gap between these. Or maybe you bring hands down a little bit more. But I like how they're offset a little bit and how this is a different color. That looks really nice. The other thing I'm going to say is these words are too close to the edge of the page. If this was actually printed, a lot of these words would get cut off. These words would get cut off, and these words would get cut off. So you always want to maintain at least a 0.2 or 0.25 margin. So in your mind, just think about it as probably 2 or 3 letters worth of width. You need to stay away from the edge, okay? And I also see you have some hyphens here. So what you need to do is you just need to go into your paragraph palette again. And when you have everything, click Control A to highlight. And then you're going to turn off your hyphens. Right now you have them on. You're going to turn them off. Okay? And some items here bulleted. I don't know if those, let me see if you also have subheadings. You may need to create some oh, yep, there's your subheading. You have one. I think you might need more. And then this is way too big again, okay? So be sure to make this a lot smaller. That's going to give you way more white space. And then I would not have this bolded. I would just have it maybe a space and then smaller, because generally your attributions, you don't want to draw attention to where you found this. You want to draw attention to your picture, to your subheading, to your white space and how pretty the design looks. And so that's your main goal for this. This image is throwing me a little bit. I don't know, is it just the sky? I don't know if there's anything, this line up here on the top of it, I don't know exactly what that is. It made me think the photo was cropped oddly. And it has a lot of weird lines, like it was taken through a screen, which isn't a horrible thing, but for a magazine, I'd probably say you need to find something that's a little bit more clear blue sky as opposed to one with this hash over it. So if you're able to do that, that would be good. And then I'd take away this stroke on the edge so it looks a little bit more modern, because a lot of the time they used to use strokes on programs that were some of the first programs for designing, and so it immediately kind of gives it a dated look. Okay, so that would help too. And again, play around with that principle of making things bigger than they need to, even with your images. So when your type is a lot smaller, and if you could break this up into like 2 or 3 paragraphs, that would look awesome, because everyone will be super intimidated by this huge long paragraph. So feel free to break this up and then make your image bigger and your type size a lot smaller, and that's going to help give you a lot more options. Okay. See if there's anything else I'm thinking of. You have your pulled quote, a text wrap. Oh, I see your text wrap is here. Okay, another thing is I would remove that stroke right there. And then I'm not sure what you wrapped here. If it's the shape, you need to increase the amount of space between where the shape ends and the edge of it. So in the text wrap options, you're going to go into that and you're going to increase the amount of space, because right now, see how these letters are sitting on this black line? That creates some visual conflict. So you're going to remove this black line, but then there's going to be this nice teal blue line, and you still want to increase the amount of space between it and where your word starts. And then I would probably make this portion a little bit smaller and this portion large. And I will recommend that instead of changing to this new font, you stick with this one, because this font especially is one that I've seen a lot and is pretty dated. And so I would go back to something like this. Maybe you do sans serif and you have it italicized for this portion. And then here you have this nice serif again. Okay, and try to just pull everything away from the edges. That's a lot of the conflict that's happening, is everything is super close to the edges, so it's creating some issues. All right, so feel free to send me over your design with some edits if you want me to take a look at it again. I hope your changes go smoothly. Oh, remember to add in at least 1 or 2 other subtitles, because you only have that one. So figure out some place to put it. When you decrease your font size, you're going to have so much more room, and it's going to free you up a lot to add in some of the things you need to, like white space and like those subheadings, okay? Also, this letter T, I like how you have it big. You're definitely thinking along the right track. Just make sure you do it the way I showed you in the announcement video, so it dips down underneath. And that is in the paragraph palette right here. Okay, so you're going to take that T and you're just going to increase the size of it just like that. That's going to help it look a lot more contemporary. Okay, that's it, Shelby. I wish you the best of luck. I know you can do it. All right, let's see who we're off to next. Oh, Shelby, tears. Okay. Stephanie. Okay, Stephanie didn't opt in. Joanne? Joanne did. Okay, Joanne. Let's see. Make sure I'm still broadcasting. I've had it before where it stopped broadcasting and I've been sitting here talking to myself for an hour. Okay, it's only a game. Page 2. Page 3. There you go. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. I see you have a lot of body copy. Right off the bat, I'm probably going to remind you, or you may not have heard me say this before, but it's totally okay to chop off even a whole section if you need to at the end in order to free yourself up so you have some white space that you can add into this design. So you can make your images bigger, so you can give these columns a little bit more room to breathe on the sides. See how much room my columns have to breathe around them and how that really helps it look nice and modern. Okay, so try to add a little bit more of that white space in, even if that means you need to chop off the last couple of paragraphs. Totally fine with that. Okay, I'm going to guess that you're going to text wrap around this whistle too. Or did you? Oh, I think you may have. Oh, can't tell. You may have text wrapped according to a square around it. Let's see. Text wrap. You may have something like this selected, wrap around bounding box, or one of these, and make sure you have this selected, wrap around object shape, okay? And wrap to both right and left sides, and make sure it says alpha channel. Okay, I think those are the things that may be making it wrap in a weird box as opposed to wrap around the cool line of the whistle, which wouldn't that be neat to have it wrap right around there. Okay, so try to see if you can make that happen. Also, you have definite leeway to break these into paragraphs because this is really hard on the reader to have such a huge chunk of type. So break this into paragraphs, make it easy on them. You have my permission. Another thing is your headings. I love that you have them in a contrasting color. I would love to see a contrasting typeface too. The other thing is I would take off that black box around them. I can tell that it's a black box. You just added probably a stroke to the text box because see how close it is up here. And I can't hover over it because it's just going to show me your name. But see on the top of the T and the tops of the F's and the top of the I how close that text box is. So it's too close for comfort. So I would recommend removing that and just not having a box around it. Or if you feel really strongly you definitely want a box, I would add a shape that just doesn't have a fill. And I would make it align with the corner of your column here and the corner of your column over here. One thing you could do too with this lot of type is you could justify it. Okay, so you would go into your paragraph palette and you would select this option. You want to Control A. You would select this option. Right now you're probably on this and see how I have this really ragged edge all along there. You want to select this one. It's going to justify it and make it have nice clean lines. So I would recommend justifying it if you're going to keep a box around your subtitles. So it's not so much back and forth, your eye jumps in here, out, out. Okay, so if you want to do that shape, probably justify the text to keep things looking nice and tidy, and show me you understand the principle of alignment by having the shape not end at an arbitrary place, but have the shape end where your column ends and start where your column starts. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at page 2. Looks pretty good. I might make the columns a little bit smaller, and I'd probably bring this column up so they end at the same place. You may have done that so you can start this one on a new page, which is not a bad idea, but I would then move this column up probably 2 lines so these two can end at roughly the same area, and then just center them both. Pull this down a little bit so the space down here is about equivalent to the space up here. Be sure to do the same thing. I'm going to assume these subheadings have boxes around them too. It's great that you're being consistent. Just try to make them align like we mentioned in the other one. And oh man, your talk has huge paragraphs. That's funny. Yeah, break these up. It's just visually hard on the eye. And maybe consider a contrasting typeface. I think I may have already mentioned that, but if not, that's a good thing to think about. Okay. And, oh, you know what? I don't see any contrasting typeface. So I think you can do something really fun since you're kind of working from a blank slate here. And if you're thinking about doing something that's sporty, it might be fun to come in, and I bet you they have a category somewhere here. Let's see. That looks like school. Maybe something like this or like this. Wouldn't one of these be fun? Okay, so if you don't know how to download these, I mentioned that at the end of my weekly announcement video this week. But that would be really cool, and that would kind of match your theme that you have going on. Something like this would be really cool, but see how it's kind of grungy? You want to make sure it's going to stay legible. And so you might choose one that's a little bit more legible, or you go to, let's see, those are scripts that are old school. They might have ones that aren't scripts that are also kind of like school. Retro maybe. Oh, here's old school, fancy. Let's see. Yeah, something like this. These could be fun. Okay, so play around with that a little bit. See if you can come up with something that will really add some dynamics to your overall design. I like that you have this wrapped. I would increase the padding between the words. See how this is living super close to your jersey on this side? So you want to go into that text wrap, and you need to bump up the width, right? Okay, so you're going to bump this, and what's that's going to do? It's going to pull this further away from your shape, okay? So make sure you do that so it's not so close to that. One thing I might recommend, it looks a little awkward that this jersey is just floating and it has such a hard edge. So you may consider moving your jersey down to the edge of the page and making it even bigger. You could even have it go off the side of the page a little. And imagine a big, huge jersey right there with a wrap around the whole right side of it. That could be really fun. All right. And then this looks cool. I would probably decrease the amount of space between your heading and this. And right now there's not a lot of an alignment going on except for right here. So think about where you want aligned. This is left aligned right here, which is a good start, but maybe you need to right align with the E, your subheading or something. Okay, so think about alignment and how you want it to play out on the page. So there are a few ideas for you. And if you find you have a lot of just white background, so if you want to mix it up, think about adding maybe some red shapes or a red shape. You don't have to go crazy, but that could work. Oh, and a pull quote. Someone mentioned a pull quote. Thanks, Kathleen. Yep, got to add that in. So maybe add in a shape with a pull quote, and the shape could be in a color, or your pull quote could be really vibrant in the color itself. All right, so there are a few ideas for you, Joe, and I look forward to seeing your final draft and what you decide to do with this. Okay, thanks. All right, who's next? Okay, Ching. Let's see. Oh, I like your contrasting typefaces. These subheadings look really nice. And this looks good too, that your pull quote is actually on the image. I like that. One thing that looks a little bit odd to me is that this text wrap is, see how it's really ragged over here, but here it's nice and crisp. What might be happening is maybe you inserted this circle and it actually has a white background around it already. And so it's doing the text wrap on the white background. And if that's the case, there are a few different things you can do. They're a little bit more advanced and they involve using the pen tool. You need to trace around the edge of your circle like that, okay? And then once you have a shape, you're then going to do a text wrap on your shape. All right, so you might need to do that if you're having a problem with that circle. Another thing you could do is you could move this over to a side. Well, if you know how to use Photoshop, you could take it in and take away the background. So if you're having trouble with this, maybe email me, or this might be a good thing to meet with the tutor on, because it is making a really weird shape, and I can tell you did the text wrap on it, but it just is looking really weird. So I don't know why it's so ragged over here and so crisp on this side. Maybe maybe it's probably just because it's ending where the words would end. So if the words were all the same width on this side, it would have a nice crisp line here too, but it doesn't. And so it's creating a little bit of an odd situation here. So we could play around with this a little bit more. You can meet with a tutor about that. That's a little bit more advanced, how to wrap around a shape with a white background, which is my assumption of what's going on there. Okay, so I love this image that you took, and this is a really nice pulled quote, or maybe this is your intro paragraph. See how close it is to the edge of the shape though? See how your type is living right along that line? That's probably because you just added a fill to the background of a text box. Instead, I would recommend deleting this background on your text box and inserting a shape instead. And that shape you can make wider than your text box, okay? And so that will help give a little bit more space for these words to breathe so they're not right up against the edge, making them a little bit hard to read, okay? I like that your title is looking really good. It is center aligned. I'd love to see you challenge yourself a little bit and try to play around with a different alignment. Okay, maybe you have womanhood. You could make it a little bit bigger even, and then you could tuck the highest place of honor right underneath the O through the H, and you could write a line by James L. Faust over here. Okay, so play around, try to challenge yourself a little bit on this placement. I'm not a huge fan of this box around it, but it could work if you really want to keep it. Okay, so just play around with that a little bit more. Your columns are looking nice. They might even look a little bit more crisp if you want to try to justify them. So you just need to, and then I gotta delete this weird little shape I made here. Okay, so you just need to go in your type to the paragraph, and you can click on this justified. Okay, right now it probably looks like this, and see how it has a nice, well, not nice, ragged edge here. Instead, you could do this and justify them so it has a nice crisp line, which I think justified always looks really good when you have a white background. So that might be an advantage. If you feel like you need a little bit more white space, I'm okay if you want to cut off a few of these bottom paragraphs so you have a little bit more room to play around, because maybe this image might look better bigger, this image might look a little bit better bigger as well, and so cutting off a few paragraphs could probably give you some flexibility. I love how large you have your subtitles, and I do think maybe this image is also a little bit too close right here. So I might either scoot the image this way a little bit so it's really interrupting this column, or because I'm assuming this is where the page is going to fold, you could just crop the image a little bit more so it's cropped right where the page is going to fold anyway. Okay, so those are a few ideas for you, and I look forward to seeing what your final is going to look like. It's off to a really good start. Another thing I did just think of is I don't love this background color. I feel like it's competing with the sand a little bit. So maybe see if you can play around and try to come up with something different here. Okay, so I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Bye, Ching. Okay, Kylie. Okay, nope, I don't think Kylie opted in. Tom opted in. All right, hopefully this went a little bit smoother for you, Tom. I know you said you were having a hard time with the worksheet, and that is totally understandable. The worksheet's probably one of the more difficult assignments because it's your very first time working in Adobe, and I'm not sure if the spread went a little bit easier for you. Hopefully it did a bit. Okay, Revelation for the Modern World. I see you have your subtitles. They're jumping out to me, which is really good. Okay. I can't remember if it was you that asked if it had to be an image you took, but I think it was. And these are looking like LDS.org images to me. So do you remember you need to have, oh yeah, and this one obviously wasn't taken by you. Well, shouldn't say obviously, but I'm guessing this one wasn't taken by you. Okay, so make sure you have those two images that you took, and then you can throw on this one. Is that Elder Christofferson? I think so. And then you can throw on this one of Elder Christofferson as well, or you can throw on a different one, but you do need to have those two that you've taken for sure. Okay. One of the first things I'm thinking when I look at this is you have trapped white space. So you have some white space on the page, and then you have it boxed in. Look at how many boxes you have. You have your title up in a little box. You have the box down the middle of the page. You have this box. Behind it, I can see there's weird, maybe your image is on there twice. I don't know. There's a weird little cutout box right here. And then there's the box around the edges. And then these are underlined. And so there's the beginning of a box. So it's a lot of lines and boxes. So I would recommend look at this and take away 2 or 3 of the boxes, okay? maybe even one would make it look a lot better. Maybe you just take away this outer one, or maybe you take away this middle one, okay? So play around with that a little bit. Another thing is your typeface is really large. So I would downsize this, and that is going to free you up to make your images bigger. You can pull these images down. Don't be afraid of the edge of the page. Full bleed is our friend. It's gonna make your design look way more contemporary. Okay, like those movie posters, how many of the images go off the page? Almost all of them. Okay, so pull this off the page. That's gonna help it look like it's a lot more contemporary. Another thing we need to do is we need to turn off the hyphens. See how these hyphens are jumping out to me like crazy? You're gonna go in here to your paragraph palette. You're going to select you're going to Control A to select all your type. You're going to turn off your hyphenate. All right. And because your type is so big, you're going to feel like you're not getting very many words to the line. Once you make your type size smaller, it's going to fix that and things are going to look a lot more tidy. Another thing you could consider that's going to help this little bit of craziness going along on the sides here is you can consider justifying. Control A, you're going to come to your paragraph palette. Right now you have it like this with the ragged edge. You can click here to make it justified. Okay, I just mentioned on someone else's critique, I think when you have a white background, a justified, where you have a nice crisp line here, really helps it look a lot better. Okay, so this is getting smaller. When our body copy gets small, what automatically should get big is a really bold, amazing, fearless title. Okay, so here you have a serif. Here you have a serif. Here you have a serif. Let's check out your other images and see if you have any other contrasting. Okay, this is kind of more decorative font script, but I want to see this more decorative script instead. Well, not instead. You can keep it with this, but I want to see it for sure with your title. Okay, and I think you probably made your title so small because you're feeling like you got to fit a lot in. And when you make this smaller, the size, it's going to give you a lot more space up here on the top. Okay, do me a favor and look at dafont.com. Go through the scripts and try to see if you can find something that matches in tone with your article. Okay, say you end up choosing something, I don't know, this one looks a little bit more masculine, right? Maybe not quite as, does that one look girly? Maybe. Okay, so let's just say you decide to go with something like this. Okay, and you have it up here. It's big. Maybe you decide to leave modern world in a serif. But then you have revelations for the in this awesome script. Okay, and then you have your subheadings. You italicize them, which is a good start. You know, it's definitely showing that you understand the principle of contrast. But it would look maybe even better to have it in a cool script font. I would recommend not underlining them because your line is not going to be aligned on the end with anything. And so it's going to contribute to this ragged edge over here even more. Okay, so I would probably just, you can either keep, if you really love this italicized in the beige, go for it. But it might look even better to go with another script font, which is the same one that you're using on your title and same one that you're using on your pulled quote. That's going to show me you understand the principle of repetition. Okay. I will say I'm not sure about the beige and the white and the teal. And then on this page, there's not a lot of color either. So I try to push yourself a little bit more. And these lines are doing the same thing. They're trapping your white space. Okay, so it's looking a little bit more like a newsletter, you know, for a small organization than a really professional magazine spread for a worldwide organization. And part of that is all these little boxes you have going on. Okay, so here we're going to have smaller type, and then you can make where your columns start and where they end a little bit more consistent. So say you have your one column here with more white space to the left of it, more white space to the right of it, and a column beside it, and where they start and where they stop is aligned. Okay, and that's going to take away some of this awkward white space down here, excuse me, and instead free up some cool white space on the top. So see, look at, for example, see how the white space around these really makes it look contemporary. Okay, so this is kind of what you want to go for. This white space to breathe, for your eye to rest. And then you look at the big images and you think, oh wow, I'm intrigued by that image because my eye has a space to rest. I definitely recommend not making this font the font that you stick with. it's a pretty dated one that's been around for a long time and is probably overused. So I definitely go away from this. And then your articles of faith, it feels a little arbitrary, just flying over here. I would probably left align it since you have your quote left aligned down here. And when you remove these boxes, then you could then put a box around your pulled quote. And that would be a good use of a box to draw attention to something that's out of the ordinary, as opposed to boxing in all the other things that don't need to be boxed for emphasis. Okay. This subheading doesn't really go with this. I would make sure it's maybe in between two of your paragraphs, since this starts in the middle of a sentence. And then there was one other thing I was going to mention was this space is a little bit too big, I think. So pull it up a little bit more. I promise you, once you make this smaller, your font size smaller, and once you unbox things, and once you make your images bigger and your title bigger, way, way bigger, it's going to come together and it's going to look a lot better. Okay, so let me know if you have any issues or problems. Feel free to email me another draft, because I just gave you a lot of possible things you could change. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you could make some of them and email me, and I'll, let you know if your instincts are kind of leading you in the right place, or any ideas I have for things that would look even better. Okay, so thanks, Tom. I look forward to seeing your final draft. All right. Got Tom. Okay, I think I'm going to have to take a break. Let's see who's next. Okay, Mari. I'm going to have to take a break because I have to go visit teaching. Get to go visit teaching. But I am going to start with you when I'm back at this later tonight. Alrighty. Thanks, guys. Bye.